Well, good evening, and thank you all so much for joining us this evening. My name is Leah Frieden, and I'm a reference librarian at the Fayetteville Public Library. And this event is part of Lift Every Voice, Why African American Poetry Matters. And it's a national public humanities initiative of the Library of America. And it was presented in partnership with the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, with generous support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and the Emerson Collective. The series of programs is going to continue through the weekend. So on Saturday, we have a performance from a band, Ozark Waba, a lively band dedicated to keeping Afro pop, reggae, West and South African music alive in Northwest Arkansas. And then last but not least, on Sunday, we will have a poetry workshop led by Natasha Devon on the topic of poetry as healing. So moving on to tonight's event, I would like to introduce you to Geffrey Davis and F. Douglas Brown. Geffrey Davis is the author of 2 full-length collections, Night Angler, winner of the James Laughlin Award from the Academy of American Poets, and Revising the Storm, winner of the A. Poulin Jr. Poetry Prize. His poems have appeared in Crazyhorse, New England Review, the New York Times Magazine, the New Yorker, PBS NewsHour, Ploughshares, and elsewhere. Named a finalist for the Hurston Wright Legacy Award, Davis has received the Anne Halley Poetry Prize, the Dogwood Prize in Poetry, the Porter Fund Literary Prize, and the Wabash Prize for Poetry, as well as fellowships from Bread Loaf, Cave Canem, and the National Endowment for the Arts, the Vermont Studio Center, and the Whiting Foundation for his involvement in the Prison Story Project, which strives to empower incarcerated people in Arkansas to tell their own stories through writing. He teaches with a program in creative writing and translation at the University of Arkansas and with the Rainier Writing Workshop, Pacific Lutheran's low-residency MFA program. Davis also serves as the poetry editor for Iron Horse Literary Review. F. Douglas Brown is the author of 2 poetry collections, Icon and 0 to 3, winner of the 2013 Cave Canem Poetry Prize, selected by U.S. Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith. Brown, an educator for over 20 years, currently teaches English and African American poetry at Loyola High School of Los Angeles, an all-boys Jesuit school. He is both a Cave Canem and Kundiman Fellow and was selected by Poets and Writers as one of their 10 notable debut poets of 2014. His poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets, the PBS NewsHour, the Virginia Quarterly, Bat City Review, the Chicago Quarterly Review, the Southern Humanities Review, the Sugar House Review, Cura Magazine, and Muzzle Magazine. He is the co-founder and curator of Unfadable, the Requiem for Sandra Bland, a quarterly reading series examining restorative justice through poetry as a means to address racism. And I am so grateful to have them both with us tonight. Thank you both for being here.
All right. So I'm gonna kick us off, and Doug and I put together some visual compliments to go with the poems. All right. The Epistemology of Birds. My niece stood one morning at the border of knowing sparrow as a compact crash into the living room window. And in the wake of that noise, I turned 10 again, pointing my BB gun at birds, ignorant of the seconds up ahead, the sudden swerve of consequence. I no longer recall which species, just their tawny toes nearly invisible against the branch. Taking aim, I coveted their movements, their defiance of space and time, as when what I can't forget. The first one I hit from a limb, its fall a burnt struggle, half against sky, half against ground, and me half expecting to see it denounce both and gravity and cut across the world again like visible wind. Instead, it finished, fell, and then I had feathers against the green grass and my embarrassed desire to have it fly back inside the tree. And so, when that sparrow struck the shadow of my niece's curiosity, I did what I could to mute that blunt arrival, rushed outside, gently scooped the broken neck, and headed toward the alley to hide it beneath a week's worth of garbage and newspapers, searching on my return for a different image of bird. I don't know if anybody remembers the Miss Cleo commercials, but this next poem is one day during Cave Canem Retreat with Doug. When you're up writing really late, you never know what's gonna like yank your attention, and this memory became this poem, and it's addressed to my cousin. And it's titled "Call Me Now." Take us then, two Black boys plus the poverty line. Take the 90s. We carried scratch rap CDs concealed in bomber jackets, sagged in baggy jeans, and cocked our hats backwards in some small defiance of the waking knowledge that a future was barreling our way, possibilities, obscurity fast behind it. Add the fathers we feared becoming, stern fathers who forgot to hug, weak fathers who forgot to hug. Add mothers pinned beneath the never-ending work week. Then raise it all to the power of 3 a.m. commercials with psychics giving better shapes to tomorrow for the full price of eggs, a gallon of milk per minute. I still envy that you caved first to the weight of your curiosity at the numinous bodies we might burst into, that your voice even then had a well deep enough to sound 18 or older. Fuck it, you mumbled, and picked up the phone, clearing the music in your throat. I tuned in on a muted cordless as you accepted the charges for balancing the problem. Factor in the operator who caught the boy in your voice. Subtract her clairvoyant gaze, but keep the costs. Call back when you're older, hun. How could we calculate knowing what we feared would be set into a fleshy stone, would be canceled out with worries, with other worries? Although our mothers wore us out when the phone bill arrived, I still carry the messy formulas of those nights of testing touch tone combinations to the future. 1-800, please. 1-800, who can we be? And this next poem has an epigraph from Robert Hayden, who's a poet that Doug and I have been in conversation with. And it's from probably his most well-known poem, the end of it. And it's, what did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Unfledged. Weekends too, my father roofed poor neighborhoods at prices only his back could carry into profit. In the name of labor's virtue, or was it another bill collector's callous calling again? My brother and I became his two-boy cleanup crew. During those hard, gloved hours under the sun's weight, I studied my father from the ground, the distance he kept between us, his version of worry. This work gave him chance to patch over his latest night in county jail, to shout over something other than his drug-heavy belly song. More than witnessing the way he knew a hammer, more than the sweat. The grace of his body grew when I noticed the cheap pigeon magazines tucked in his back pocket, black and white photos of pedigreed squabs he'd fallen for, folded for a later that never came. The careful study we do with things that refuse to become ours. Evenings, he tended to his homemade kit box of birds, bathed in the constant coos from a mongrel mix of orphaned Birmingham rollers and hand-captured homers that he bred the distance out of, turning our block into the new destination their blood pulled them toward. On the job, from below, as he perched and drove nails through the day's heat, I checked the silhouetted length of his back for signs of stiffness and his impossible arms, anything I might point to, certain, like most people, if the ache could be found, you'd know how to start soothing, where to place your hands. And this is the Epistemology of Rosemary for L. Together in the garden, a cigarette cradled between her fingers, she tells me of breeding cockatiels. Clutch after successful clutch, and what she can't forget, the time of one too many and the smallest chick pushed from the nest. How she thought, mistake, and put it back again, only to see the same simple denial. And then for days trying to make her hands avian, to syringe feed the bird into flight. One thin month lies between us and our miscarriage, and I feel her grow silent under the new vastness of this wreckage. I try to talk about my father breaking blighted pigeon eggs. At 12, I thought patience and pressed him to wait 1 week, then 2, until frustration set and he crushed the shells before me against the coop. I wanted to gather up each shard, to will those gossamer embryos into growth again. What do we rescue now, at home, gleaning herbs in the evening as swallows swerve in the fallow air? I lean over her shoulder. Her hair smells of the rosemary we take and of the rosemary we leave to freeze in the garden. All right. Like this for a reason. How to find the tender underbelly of grief, to turn it down onto its side so you can hold it, kiss it, and rename it. My mother taught this. The lost dog became patience, and finding it dead along the road meant go ahead and cry now. But then, with her fingers spread against our sobbing chests, we feel pain large like this for a reason. Each month, the money thinned, and she stood alone in the kitchen, humming the last bit of our food into songs of tomorrow. Even her cataract eye, the one my father punched years ago, setting the unhurried cloud into motion, we've since claimed as victory. Though before the surgery, she never mentioned an absence of color, the hues fading slowly enough to manage the heart's break. Everything's so soft, she'd say, and meant it. The sharp dive of green growing shallower in the sound, cornflower blue calming itself shade by shade, the keys of yellow muted to a familiar flatness she called spring. All right, I'm going to read the first two parts of this poem about my son's birth. What we set in motion. 1. Months out from my bout, I return home after training deltoids and biceps to push past the letdown of exertion, to never stop throwing punches. Our baby boy bides time in Elle's belly, 2 weeks late, and she smiles, names me her gentle boxer as I shadow my way down the hall toward the shower. The next day, after 0 centimeters worth of progress, she sends me back to the gym to spar, to save my mind from running the unnecessary laps. I spend round after round risking and taking damage in search of that perfect left hook to the body, that soft midsection crunch. I land a few home and feel the accuracy moving deeper than mechanics, burying itself in the blue memory below. Inside the ring, I sweat out everything but bob and weave, but balance and breath, bearing each combination's bad intent until brutality blossoms into something almost beautiful. 2. And then it's time. As in the dark, we're in it. Maternity wing of the hospital, the lengthening hours of our son's slow arrival. As in the dark, a contractions wave ends, the wash of pain receding, and Elle leans back into the rocking chair, back into the chasm of exhaustion, eyelids locking her exit from the room. I squat before her and wait, her body buoyed in the open sea of labor as in the dark. My gaze fixes on the map of monitors, scanning that pixelated horizon for the next contractions approach. When it does, as in the dark, her eyes flare inside the room once more, hands raising to clasp behind my neck as in the dark. I hear the moan of her spirit bearing this being into light, and I lift her loaded weight, place pressure on her hips and say, give me everything, darling, as in the dark. There is no word for the infinite divide between my desire and my inability to rock this boy's burden from her, to rock her from the tides of hurt he's riding in on. This is all her. As from the dark, as from the sea, another wave builds inside her, and I send whispers across water, coaching her deeper into the swallow of its force, calling it what we want, calling it love or joy or peace as in the dark, barely trusting each moment that moves her further from this shore, where I wait for her to plant our son into these arms. All right, I'm gonna close my time by reading 2 bops, which is a form invented by a Cave Canem elder. And this one in particular is actually talking back to and borrows lines from one of Doug's poems from his first book, 0 to 3. And there's a lyric that runs between each of the stanzas. All right, and this is in the voice of my son. Bop No More Your Mere, side A, my son's prelude. When I refused the first watery light, pooled beyond the birth canal, the doctor knifed a second full sky against the dark, wet comfort of my mother's tower of organs. For a time that will always seem too long to her, I made no sound, only light. You'll never know, dear. Since then, a harsh history of sound, sharp sonic feedback. They say good morning and I flinch, cup 2 palms of ocean around the inlet at my ears. Fasten shut these unspoken eyes. They sing good night, and you are my sunshine, and I shush them through these ceremonies of day, even the ripest noise. No amount of care can soften this clenched listening. You'll never know, dear. The body executes while the eye judges. Because we need this approach all the same, I watch them adjust to my oral fist. They say more with less mouth. They begin to see what I refuse to reflect or receive. Silted lake, quiet canary. This body executes, and I will judge and jury until they get it right. You'll never know, dear. And this is Bop No More Your Mirror, side B, my wife's fugue, for L. The morning after your diagnosis, we don't say endometrial cancer. Because we stayed locked and post-coital knots, woozy with whispering names for the future. We don't dare blurt hysterectomy. And the blessing of never having to mouth uterine sarcoma takes months to memorize. Instead, we weigh the 2 blue notes held by your uterus. You'll never know, dear. Ode to the knifed and hallowed midst of your tomorrow. Ode to the retired right well of our son's slow arrival. Ode to the serosa drift that anointed the pelvic gathering. Ode to the fertile bombed bardo of probability. Ode to the sung and silent afterbirth of loss. Ode to the ghosts now in our bed. Ode to your head raised from the wet riddle of hands. Ode to the bloody almost of everything. Ode to the uterus. You'll never know, dear. The morning after your surgery, we don't say endometrial cancer. Because we stayed locked in post-coital knots, woozy with whispering names for the future. We don't dare blurt hysterectomy. And the blessing of never having to mouth uterine sarcoma takes a lifetime to memorize. Instead, we weigh the 2 blue notes held by your uterus. You'll never know, dear. Thank y'all.
Wow. Please feel free to unmute, give some love to my man, Geffrey Davis. Throw some love in the chat. Woo. I'm going to give him golf talk.
Snap.
Thank you. Snaps. Yes. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to read with Geffrey. It's always just like, I always tell my students this, that Geffrey, I know Geffrey's work almost as well as my own, in that I've seen, probably other than myself, just my own work, I've seen his work in process more than any other poet, and every time it's just remarkable. So thank you, Geffrey, for inviting me here and bring me to your home library, and appreciate everyone for being here. Again, feel free to flex those digital claps and everything for my man, Geffrey Davis. So Geffrey and I, we met at Cave Canem, and one of the things with Cave Canem being the home of African-American poetry, being a place where we can be free to do and try things, is to read a new poem, to read something that no one has ever heard out loud, and only And I'm going to do that right now. And not many people have heard this one. This is the first time I'm giving it out to people who, I don't know. And so I hope you enjoy. On the side, I'm a DJ, and this poem is called A DJ Spins the Blues, the mixtape. And feel free, show me, like, if you know by digital hand raise or something, if you know some of these things that I'm gonna sample. There's a sample of Sound of Music. There's a sample from Amiri Baraka. There's a sample from the band Hot Chip. There's a sample from the band Nazi Star, Chemical Brothers, LCD Sound System, The Smiths, and my mother's favorite, Minnie Riperton. This is just one last thing. My mother passed away a couple years ago, almost 3 years ago, and I grew up in a household that was they loved music. My mother and my father really loved music so much, and so a lot of this comes from my understanding of music from her, and it's a long sonnet crown, and that all the poems are linked together. You will hear me mix in a way. So let me get started. It starts with this epigraph from the movie High Fidelity. The making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art. Many do's and don'ts. First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing. There are lots of rules. Nick Hornsby. A DJ spins the blues, the mixtape. DJ Nobody Came to My Party, AKA DJ Jam Kinnison, AKA Gomez by Night, spins slow burn and long pull, spins the lungs to fine tune ears, then samples. There are rules. Remember your fluke finding. That's someone who had all the good you memorized or jotted down while bored in high school, or graffitied on a bathroom ceiling, God in a sewer, God in a shithole dive. Hidden rules as melody to soothe malady, as lyric tethered to that same someone, also awake in an alternate dead night, listening hard and memorizing God in the liner notes, the divine, the shared joke or corny factoid you thought only you thought of in the dim light with a lit square or a candle or lava lamp. When the tape touches the palm of that someone's heart, music in that set order, cue swelling blood, cue the nourishment within each note. DJ Post No Bills, AKA DJ Frankie Pillows, swells, swell in blood, spins nourishment as slow jam for my mom, swings every crooner's sway and grace. Every moment a melody folds itself with intricate or sparse, all the harmonies you cry to while driving, while alone, and yes, while in public too. Samples any jam on it, jukebox, ass, romp, and shake. All stand by me. I'll be there. Remember the time and take me with you cuts. Since art of noise, moments in love, love lines, Art LeBeau makes a mixed directional 120 minutes of heart to heart, one at a time, lyrical do or die, love's last ditch chance. Give it all back to your mom, back to the flesh that gave you flesh. DJ House of Vibes. Why didn't I bring that beat back to the flesh that gave flesh? DJ Reminisce. DJ egg yolk during can't leave the table until your brat years over easy. DJ scars from a brother's indecency. DJ hot hanger on my face and wailing, rage consuming, gall and nuisance. DJ commotion, son of mother uproar. DJ fear cork tight in a dank cellar called, but mom. DJ epic of stubborn and growing old. Why didn't I bring that beat back when she's the one not eating or screaming at the nurse? What did I fail to put on her? Why did I pledge faith to a playlist of short fuses? DJ, mama, you're lingering in refusals. DJ, sworn allegiance. DJ, proven blood worth. DJ Mo Wo Zone, AKA Soldier's Sister, AKA Where's She At, spins the blood's worth of sworn proof when her longest relationship ends in the dim January light, then kisses mom's forehead, strokes away any loose strands of black or gray, so mom's exit, eloquent, cue, quiet brown haze, loop, dim light, and here come the requests. Hold her hand. Yes, she's looking between small and slight coughs, which you fully ingest. Take all last breaths, hers into yours, hers into yours, hers into that damn dim room, DJ Soldier's Sister. DJ fade in volume. Tap and test the mic as you bend down. Mom, it's okay. You can go. Mom, it's okay. You can go. We'll be fine. DJ Noons, aka Michon Mish, aka DJ Portugalaxy, announces, Mom, we'll be fine. He's a friend. Then Noons drops Kid A as I excuse myself to a toilet. DJ Bubbleguts, DJ Cut and Run Away from Awkward Meetings. Kid A defends friendship in front of a mother's apprehension. Kid A's divinity defines the seamless. One foot stomps earth, the other in mystic, in sound realm. Kid A in New York City, in the 90s and on repeat. Noons remixes nostalgia, small talk to counter my embarrassment, everything in its right place as I become her mother's brief bestie, and she a mixtape entitled Surrogate Mom Compilation, or Eyes Everywhere, the club mix. Tracks of familiar riff conversations as Kid A vibes the blank beginning where you, the maker, asked to give, so to hear a mother's boundless chords. DJ Malin Hamplo, aka Chata Chata Slow Dance, amps a boundless question. What room does Kid A occupy in your soul's house? And this one glows like the last dragon or just the crush on vanity. When Malin Hamplo inquires, this one sings his mother Olga. This one casts his gaze out to the ocean, spins and scratches Olga's antics, oh, silhouette wrapped around a parent. Golden orange, and we back in the brilliance of films, vivid on the actor children from The Sound of Music. Their father, his military hiding depression in gray and green, hiding all his children had to say. But when the captain walks in to his soul's house, Q recognizing a missing parent, even if only an imitation of. Q, Kid A, Q, All the golden Malenhamplo sings. My mother, she fed the people. Cue Olga's good time glow synced to her son's retelling, his pulse and his mom's legend. DJ Von Trapp Music, aka ASAP Edelweiss, aka Cappy Cap. Cue the legend of a deceased wife and mother, now in the good time glow of a choir. The captain's darling children and their performative unison in uniform. His heart, one side wood and doorway, the other dark whistles and demands. When it finally yields, surprise reaches out as if to say, the hills are lonely, but I am yours. Believe the two colors of any song's head, gray and gold, or green and guitar. When the captain takes the lead, when the children and their heartbeats accompany, believe the remix too. Dear hearts, I'm yours. I am yours. And yet, the best of you radiates your mother's legend. DJ half Taurus, half twin, AKA Shut It All Down, AKA 3D, keeps mom's legend before her specter speaks to requests, is a cold body allowed suggestions on a final haircut. What answers have entered the chamber of your dead mother? Will pompadouring her lungs ensure nothing smears her forever makeup? Daydream or disappear? Here lies the woman who taught you everything. She waits for you to leave a falsetto or two, so her lips forever mine. Son, this is how you pick a ripe melon. Son, season with purpose and cook better than anyone, fam included. When mom requests, stay with her locks, their everlasting bounce, bragging on her kids, or always advising. DJ House of Vibes. I'm mom's bragged on kid amongst all the bragged upon. The infamous DJ Goody Good who ditches this name for an affair with a Republican. DJ proof I'm flawed, but so was she. DJ politics and hours of anger ending in beautiful cliche. We fucked for the fuck of it, hoarding Hummer-sized passions as booze and the Beatles' undressed beliefs tainted our vows. Beware when I blame a playlist for its pop and dig, and not the deliberate gathering. Beware any foolishness I can catalog before my mother, sisters, daughters hear the albums I own, begging penitence before any burning. DJ House of Vibes. Foolishness turns mercy to begging, turns burning into shame. Silence, but never apology. DJ Running Man. DJ, you're a jerk reject. When I finally spoke, my voice and its pauses, electric staccato, like the bugs dive towards to die. Mom, I cheated. When I told her, mom's hard swallow caved in even over the phone. When I told her, I felt her stare down from miles away. Then away, somewhere back to a past with men whose injury she'd escaped, now echoing in her youngest. Distortion and feedback, the gross screech a mic makes when a sound system overloads. What hum, what piercing hurt had I whistled into mom's ears? What I thought was truth, distant music, and frozen looks. Even over the phone, no one wants to live without the gaze of their mother. DJ Los Pescados, AKA Lux Coffee All-Star DJs, AKA Deep House Macchiato. They know over and over and over and over a life without someone's gaze, so best to ration a song's hypnosis, best to cut a track at chorus before someone loses himself on the middle of a crowd or found humping a speaker in the corner, eyes closed and alone, despite how packed the club gets when new disco shines on too many raconteurs as solo dancers, too many upset bartenders brewing too many or too few tips, too many DJs' tears lacing every boy band sadness remix too. The weekend never ends, so best to spend in daylight from a cafe so all indie and shoegaze can speak, change your mind without any thump and build. Besides, no one gets Hope Sandoval, no one gets Hope Sandoval, no one gets Fade Into You, or Landslide, or As, or Adore, or Hallelujah, while tangled on a dance floor. DJ House of Vibes. Once my lover untangled me while Badu baptized us both with sweat, water, and funk, spiritualized bass, a body of bass, flexing her good in sync with box wine. We offered our row. Once my lover, all the bright a tangle of unleashed glow sticks bursting. While our present company laughed or lusted, we laser rode our favorite of all favorites toward a together future, and hallelujah. Once my lover untangled me while under the influence of the Chemical Brothers, but we reunited to their swoon by the end of the show. There's nothing else, boo, but to hold on to all the promises on and hold all the promises on beat. So what I prayed for when I first queried your taste in music, true, and all mixtape gifts, true, and what mom said of all our get downs. Bill Bacon, AKA DJ Real Rakin. Of all my get downs and mixtape magic, the time spent making vibrations speak, each individual song lifted damn near with tweezers, damn near with spells and spit, of all mixtape voodoo and rules, mixtape master count and EQ bias perfection, so my voice can be carried on someone else's poetry. Bill Bacon's Smith compilation stands tallest on my many heaps of plastic and ribbon. DJ Real Rakin, AKA Fandom Master Mix, wanted me to believe in the Smiths so bad, he took an F in English. Should have been enough to tell me heartbreak and thorns could make a boy groove. Ah, the Smiths, your loud and lovely desperation, instant fave of all faves. I let you rock for years, yet I still failed to beat match the facts. Bill's mother, gone. And later, my mom pleading, will they ever believe me? DJ Hollow Hollow Bro Down Dreamscape. We the children of the 70s, natural and soul trained party line down waning consciousness, waning hope. We were 80s kids, on the move as analog fought digital at our fingertips. One hand wax, the other galaxy. Mom, we barely made rent, yet managed to drape us in acid wash and starter coats. Our orange cushion headphones blocking broke. In the 90s, we were teens feeling themselves. Our transitions would not only tweak at the break, we shook it all, baby. Look there, the future belonged to Prince, to Luther, to Jodeci, and Belle Biv DeVoe, fresh on a box in the park. Mom healthy with slaying bright overalls, Golden Gate on a Sunday. Look there, Mom, from the 2000s, a photo of your whole family underneath the best sun. No one could tell us then that your love would die. That's the last one. Thank you all for listening and bearing with this. Grandmaster Deep Cuts. No one would tell us then that your love would die. Gone and later pleading, will they ever believe me? True, all our get downs, or adore, or hallelujah, tangled on the floor. No one wants to live without burning. You radiate your own mother's legend, glow synced with her illuminating legend. So hear a mother's boundless chords. It's okay, you'll be fine. DJ sworn allegiance to the flesh that gave you order and blood, nourishment, each note. Thank you all.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Y'all give it up. God, I don't know if y'all know, for the poets in the room, as a sonnet crown. Anyway, I'm not gonna steal the floor, but
no, go ahead. Let them know.
I
Let
appreciate
them know, Professor.
I mean, I know I'm sitting there. I'm jumping ship. We're gonna do Q&A in a second, but I realized when I was listening to you, and I just read this piece this morning and called Doug and was like, "You have to read this poem. There's something happening in this poem that I want to hear on the air." So selfishly, sort of pushed it forward. But I realized when I was listening to the poem, like I often or frequently will mourn like how books do this thing unintentionally of erasing the work that goes into the crafting and like in final published form. And what I love about like what that poem takes from the mixtape and pairs with the page is a showing of the work. Like the mixing is a part of the work, and it makes me realize that that's one of the many things that I love about it is putting that work on the page insistently and diversely. So anyways, I'm gonna let other people, but I thank you. That was the right call.
No. Thank you.
If I say so myself.
Well, I appreciate you pushing me towards that. And again, thank you all for, so, you know, it's a long poem and probably will rarely be able to read it that way. And so this is special to do it with you in mind. And, you know, and Geffrey, always, you, like we were talking about earlier, you always guide a lot of my work. And there was a moment where I mean, I know I didn't want to write this poem, you know, right after my mother passed away, and for sure, or any poems about her or having to deal with this. So this is, you know, to write is cathartic for sure. And also to play music is that kind of release, right? And to dance, to release. And it's like, there was part of me that, I think every day I talk to my brothers and sisters and we're all like, we're still grieving. But there's also a part of it that I know that our mother lives within us, and she wouldn't have wanted us to be down for this long. Like she probably would have wanted us to celebrate the party.
Well, even the titles, the AKA, like there's a kind of forcing of like the counterpoint of the blues tradition, right? The kind of laughter is built into that, both brilliant and funny and sad, kind of like trying to name yourself and rename yourself and rename yourself. And so it smuggles in the urgency to be on top of the moment, and also the difficulty to be on top of the moment by the renaming and renaming. So Man,
And like
fucking
the
A.
sharing of that moment too, right? That sharing of the renaming of it. And for so much of those of us who have grieved a parent or grieved a loved one, or even like the poems that you had alluded to, um, sometimes we think that's ours, that we
Mm,
only own it, but it's like, no, and the more I shut myself down, the more I forget to see other people and their own grief and their own things that they miss and that they're mourning. And for us, we're fortunate that as writers, that's what we do, is really try to lift up so somebody else can find ways to process instead
yeah.
of like being off on our own. And a DJ, you know, uh, I've been asked to DJ like some crazy stuff. I've been asked to do like 2 funerals, and I just had to sit with that, and it was weird at first. And I was like, well,
Mm,
I get it. Like they really want this release, to let it go and to be out. So,
mm. Um,
are there questions
yeah, are
in
there
the
questions?
crowd?
Like, in fact, Doug and I have been doing this all day. Like we called, in fact, starting yesterday, we were like, man, we should work out what we're gonna read, and then we just talked for an hour about poetry and life, and then saying we did that about 2 or 3 times today. So we'll keep going. So if folks have questions they want to put in the chat or unmute and ask, like please jump in.
Yeah, and Leah could definitely help us with that too. So, because we will just talk.
Yeah. I see something there where people ask it about work in print. So Doug's, you wanna tell them where they can get your books?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you can find our books, both of our books, anywhere on our presses. My book is Icon, my most recent book. I'm named after Frederick Douglass, and Icon is really a deep dive into looking at Frederick Douglass or honoring Frederick Douglass and trying to see how much I live up to that name. And Icon was published on an independent press called The Accomplices. It's like 3 presses put together: Writ Large Press, Entropy Magazine, and Civil Coping Mechanism. And then 0 to 3 is published by the University of Georgia. And you can find both of those there. And Jeffrey and I, we wrote a chapbook together called Begotten. That's part of like this series with URB Press. So you can find our work together. You can find our work solo. Jeffrey, when you want to tell them where your work is.
Yeah, so both my books are with BOA Editions, BOA Editions. Revising the Storm was my first book, and then Night Angler is my second most recent book. It came out in 2019.
This poem that I read, though, this is brand new. Like, y'all the first one hearing it. Please feel free to drop some suggestions in the in the chat.
Can I ask you a question about that? Because you've written, I imagine most poets at the stage that you are have written a lot of sonnets. Like, how do you think your idea of the sonnet started, and how would you describe like how it's changed? And did this poem in particular kind of change what you think about when you think about the sonnet?
Well, it changed my process a little bit for sure. And I've been writing these bops, and even I guess what I'm really working up to is to try to write the Jericho Brown duplex. And I say working up to because I think what Jericho does with that form is really take like 3 different forms and really remix them. And I think you got to practice the forms that he tries to get to that, right? He tries the blues as a form, the huzzle as a form, and then the sonnet as a form. And so me trying to understand that, to teach that to my students, I was like, well, I'm the kind, I need to practice what I preach, right? And so I was thinking of the sonnet, and the beautiful thing about the sonnet is that so many people remix it already. Like once it gets to Shakespeare, we hold Shakespeare up with it, but once it gets to Shakespeare, Shakespeare is remixing it already, right? And so it's like this perfect form to move, to kind of adjust, but still could be recognizable. And you know, we love, so many people love what Terrence Hayes has done with Wanda Coleman's American sonnet form, and then like John Murillo. So like everybody has been doing these sonnets and so many others. I was like, well, I guess I got to jump into this to really understand Jericho's work, you know. And what I found is that it changed my process a little bit because it's like the economy of the economy cars, right? So I had to just like cut things that I really lines that I loved, and I what I did was I would start a parking lot like on the draft, and like I would have the line live there, and I was like, no, I like it, but it's not really fitting. It's not serving the poem. Let's move it to this parking lot, and that really helped a lot. Been trying to draft it out, a lot of writing it out, and it was fun. It was fun.
So then the Huzzle's next.
Well, I mean, you know, 0 to 3. I've already kind of taken some of the Huzzles, and then in our book, Begotten, there's 1 or 2, and you know, I don't know. I think the next thing is really to understand the blues. And trying to understand the blues, I was like, well, I got to understand it in the music that I already know and love, and what I do as a DJ versus like how a musician would understand the blues, right? And like just to play those things and to hear those blues rhythms. I was like, I'm going to wait for that, because there's a lot of music that I listen to that's already so-called emo or sad and mourning and whatnot. And so could I honor that and make it really a part of me, and then maybe go back to those things with the blues? So that's the next one, because I don't think this kind of lament is going to go away, you know what I mean? And I got to find a way to do things that all at once, to mourn, be sad, and then let it go, like all at once. And the blues is like a perfect place, like that idea of repetition is a perfect place for it. You know? You understand that in that blues poems, and you know, even with the bops that you read, it's like it's so wrenching, right?
Yeah, I struggle with reading, not with reading it, but I'm always, there's a part of me that can't not be outside of my own ear. I mean, I'm not a singer for one. I appreciate you did a little singing there too, but I mean, that song was first introduced to me as like a love song, as a lullaby. And when I got older, when the song came back from my childhood, it came back as the blues. And so I can't help, like I don't know if I could sing it in a non-blues sort of way.
Right.
You know,
like
if you can call what I did singing.
No, right. It was really very, very much so. And that the litany of when you repeat ode over and over, I'm glad my screen was off, because I was like, like just crushed. Like it's so heart-wrenching. And then again, like there is some release too, like in that repetition over and over again.
Well, and I think like that term, like in the experience of working on that piece, that having that be the anchor word in that part was an attempt to get out from underneath the grief of the first stanza, and then to prepare for the reckoning of the last stanza, was to anchor it with this. Like, no, ode, damn it, ode is what you're trying to say, even though the end of it is up against the ode. And so at that, which is how I started to think about the sonnet too. I mean, what I'm struck by in hearing you talk about in Jericho's work shows us so much is how collaborative, you know, what we think about the sonnet, right? So we think about the sonnet as love, but how it compensates for the blues. How we think about the blues as grief, but how it compensates for love, right? How we think about the Huzzle as repetition, but it's also about moving on. And so how each of those forms, you know, ghost each other in really dynamic ways, and you know, to go about them by studying them, to hear them, you know, is you know, one of the things that you and I have in common. I often talk about with writers who, when I can hear them asking something for like a shortcut, my instincts are always to make it known that the only way I have faith of any choice I've made is to weigh all the like next, you know, 24 best options that it could have been, and you really got to go through it to trust your ear enough to say this thing that you're holding tight and that you don't want to hold tight.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited for these next poems.
Yeah, it's been good where it's gone. I had to turn it off for a little bit, and one of the things I'm trying to think of is how sound, that Alexander Pope quote, like the sound, the making sense of the sound, and how to use this like appropriately instead of just in a referential kind of way. So like while the poem like refers to all this type of music, I really try to mimic, like, so even like where you said the singing part, I try to mimic the way the sound, the way you receive the song, instead of just saying like, oh yeah, this Smith song or this LCD song, is really kind of mimics kind of the patterns of it. And that was fun to do with the sonnet, because it's short enough to kind of get to it. So, but
we had time.
Is there more?
I told y'all we would talk.
You're good.
I know, right?
Thank you both so much. That was so wonderful and so special. And I really appreciate you sharing your time and your talents with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank all of you.
Yeah. Thank y'all for being here with us, and for the invite, and for setting this up, Leah, and Lift Every Voice. And y'all check out the rest of the events that are coming too.
Please, for sure.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
All right.